You forgot to give me my pills tonight.
I know. I just don't want you depending on them anymore.
For 3 months, I never swallowed a single sleeping pill he gave me. Tonight, I'm staying awake. Narration. For the first time.
And that night, for the first time after months of pretending to drift into a drugged sleep every evening, she decided to stay awake and find out what her husband really did after believing his wife was finally unconscious. Nyara Bennett once believed the greatest pain of her life was losing her mother on a rainy October morning in Houston. But she was wrong. The real pain begins when you slowly realize the man lying beside you every night might be the very person quietly destroying your life, piece by piece. 6 weeks earlier, Nyara still believed she was simply exhausted from work and emotionally broken after the funeral. She fell asleep in the middle of the afternoon. She once left her wallet inside the refrigerator. One evening at exactly 5:46 p.m., she stood frozen in a Costco parking lot, unable to remember where she had parked her car. Derek always appeared at the perfect moment with the concerned eyes of her devoted husband. "You need more rest," he would say softly while brushing her hair behind her ear. "Your mother's death affected you more than you realize." The scariest part was that Nyara believed him. She started writing notes into her phone because she was terrified she might actually be losing her memory. Every morning she woke up feeling like her head had been dragged underwater. Some days she slept 13 straight hours and still felt exhausted. Derek was always the one making her tea before bed. Always the one reminding her to take her pills. Always the one gently pulling the blanket over her shoulders each night, like the kind of caring husband everyone admired. Until a Tuesday night 3 months ago, Nyara remembered that night perfectly because Houston was drowning in heavy rain. The sound of water hitting the back patio roof echoed from 11 p.m. Until almost sunrise. She woke up at 2:11 a.m. thirsty. Derek wasn't beside her. At first she assumed he had gone downstairs to the kitchen. But while passing the home office, she noticed a faint phone light glowing beneath the door. Then she heard his voice. "She's starting to depend on the medication now." Nyara froze in the dark hallway, her bare feet ice cold against the hardwood floor. Derek was speaking to someone on the phone with a completely different voice. No tenderness. No concern. Just a calmness so cold it made her stomach twist. "Just a few more weeks," he whispered. "She can barely remember what day it is anymore." Nyara's heart pounded so hard she thought Derek might hear it through the walls. The next morning, for the first time, she didn't take the pill her husband gave her. She pretended to swallow it, then spit it into a paper towel the second Derek turned around to wash his coffee mug. That afternoon, Nyara drove nearly 40 minutes to a private clinic in Sugarland. She still remembered the feeling of her hands trembling lightly on the steering wheel of her gray Camry while the doctor placed the test results on the desk at exactly 4:38 p.m. "This is not a normal sleep aid," the doctor said quietly. "Long-term use can cause temporary memory loss and cognitive decline." Nyara didn't cry. She just sat there silently. So silently that the doctor eventually asked if she was okay. Because in that moment, Nyara realized the problem was no longer the pills. It was the man she had been sleeping beside for 7 years. From that day on, she started performing, pretending to be more tired, pretending to forget more things, pretending to depend on Derek more each day. And Derek completely believed it. He started controlling her phone, replying to emails for her. Once he even told the neighbors that Nyara was still mentally unstable after losing her mother. Vanessa Reed, Nyara's best friend, also began visiting the house more often. Vanessa cooked, cleaned, and hugged Nyara with pity in her eyes that now made her feel sick. "You need to stay strong," Vanessa once told her while drying dishes in the kitchen. "Thank God you have Derek." Nyara used to think those words sounded comforting. Until tonight, the first night she decided to stop pretending to sleep. She lay motionless in bed while the digital clock glowed 1:58 a.m. Derek remained seated at the edge of the mattress for several minutes as if making sure the pills had worked. Then he slowly stood up. The bedroom door closed softly in the dark. Nyara opened her eyes. She waited exactly 10 seconds before slipping out of bed, her legs trembling more from fear than cold. As she reached the top of the staircase, Derek's voice immediately echoed from the living room downstairs. "She's asleep." A woman's voice laughed softly through the phone. Nyara froze because she recognized that voice instantly. Vanessa Reed, the same best friend who had held her while she cried at her mother's funeral. Nyara never slept again after that phone call. She sat curled in the corner of the bed until almost sunrise, the cream-colored blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, even though the heater hummed steadily throughout the house. Outside the window, Houston was still pitch black. The street lights cast a cold yellow glow across the rain-soaked grass, making the entire Cyprus neighborhood feel more like a strange, unfamiliar place than the home she had lived in for the past 7 years. Derek returned to the bedroom at 2:26 a.m. Nyara immediately closed her eyes. She heard him gently place his phone on the nightstand before slipping back into bed beside her as if nothing had happened. Derek's arm wrapped around her waist out of habit. Once upon a time, that embrace made Nyara feel safe. Now it made her want to cry. "Poor thing!" Derek whispered softly, believing she was deeply asleep. "Just a little longer." Nyara bit down on her lip so hard it hurt just to stop herself from trembling. The next morning, she still walked downstairs at exactly 8:17 a.m., like usual. Derek was making coffee in the kitchen wearing a gray sweater and the same gentle expression he always wore. To anyone looking in from the outside, they would have seemed like the kind of peaceful marriage people envied. "Did you sleep okay?" Derek asked. Nyara sat on the bar stool beside the kitchen island, forcing her voice to sound natural. "A little better." Derek turned around to grab a mug. "You were talking in your sleep last night. You kept calling your mother's name." Nyara froze for half a second. He was testing her, trying to see whether she remembered waking up during the night. "I don't remember," she answered quietly, before lowering her eyes to her hands like a woman who was truly exhausted and disoriented. Derek smiled with satisfaction. He believed her, and somehow that was more terrifying than anything else. Close to noon, Vanessa stopped by the house carrying chicken soup and warm bread from a bakery near Fry Road. She walked in wearing her familiar vanilla perfume and a sympathetic smile that suddenly made Nyara feel suffocated. "You look pale," Vanessa said before hugging her tightly. "Derek told me you've been forgetting your medication again." Nyara looked at her best friend, the woman who sat beside her in the hospital while her mother was dying. The woman who held her hand through the entire funeral. The woman secretly sleeping with her husband. "Maybe I'm just stressed," Nyara replied softly. Vanessa glanced toward Derek standing near the kitchen, and the two of them exchanged a look so quick, most people would never notice it. 3 months ago, Nyara wouldn't have noticed either. But now, she was starting to see every little thing she had ignored before. The way Derek always placed his phone face down whenever Vanessa visited. The way Vanessa somehow knew exactly what kind of tea Derek liked without ever asking. The way both of them occasionally fell silent the moment Nyara entered the room. Everything suddenly connected. That afternoon, Nyara pretended to be asleep on the living room sofa while Derek showered upstairs. Vanessa was cleaning dishes in the kitchen while the sound of running water echoed steadily from the second floor. Then Vanessa's phone vibrated. Nyara carefully opened her eyes just enough to peek through the edge of the blanket. Vanessa glanced around before reading the message. A few seconds later, she smiled. Not the gentle smile Nyara was used to. This one was colder, sharper. Nyara caught only 3 words on the screen before Vanessa locked the phone. "She believes us." Nyara's blood turned ice cold. That night, for the first time, she locked herself inside the bathroom and turned on the water as loud as possible, just so nobody would hear her crying. She sat on the cold tile floor with both hands pressed over her mouth to stop herself from making a sound. Not because Derek was cheating, but because she realized that for months, the two people she trusted most had been working together to slowly make her look insane in front of everyone. Around 11:43 p.m., after Derek had fallen asleep, Nyara quietly opened her mother's old laptop inside the home office. She didn't even know what she was searching for anymore. It was just a strange feeling that had followed her ever since the phone call the night before, as if her mother had been trying to warn her before she died. Nyara opened old folders filled with receipts, family photos, and insurance paperwork. Then, just as she was about to shut the laptop down, she noticed an email that had never been sent. Recipient Nyara Bennett. Subject: if anything happens to me, read this alone. Nyara stared at the email subject line for a long time without daring to open it. The old laptop screen cast a faint blue glow across her face inside the dark room, so silent she could hear the hallway clock ticking 1 second at a time. 12:08 a.m. Derek was still asleep across the hallway, completely unaware that his wife was sitting in front of the final secret her mother had left behind. Nyara's hands trembled slightly as she opened the email. Nyara, if you're reading this, it means my instincts were right. Her throat tightened instantly. I tried to convince myself Derek was only stressed about money, but there are certain things I can no longer ignore. 3 weeks ago, I caught him going through my insurance files when he thought nobody was home. When I walked in, he smiled and claimed he was looking for batteries for the TV remote. Nyara covered her mouth with one hand. She remembered that moment. That was exactly what Derek had said. Nyara, if one day you begin doubting your own memory, don't immediately believe the problem is you. Tears started falling onto the keyboard. I don't have proof. Just the instincts of a woman who has lived through enough pain to recognize the look in a man's eyes when money starts becoming more important than love. Nyara had to stop reading for several seconds because her chest hurt so badly she could barely breathe. The final line of the email sent ice through her veins. I saved copies of several important documents inside the lockbox beneath the garage. Only open it when you truly need to protect yourself. Then suddenly, creak, the hardwood floor outside the hallway groaned. Nyara instantly shut the laptop screen. Her heart pounded wildly as she heard Derek's footsteps moving toward the office. Baby, his sleepy voice called softly from outside the door. What are you doing? Nyara stood up too fast and slammed her knee painfully against the desk. She forced herself to sound calm. I couldn't sleep. The door opened. Derek stood there, wearing a black t-shirt and grey sleep pants, his hair slightly messy like someone who had genuinely just woken up. He glanced around the room before his eyes landed on the laptop sitting on the desk. Headache again? He asked quietly. Nyara shook her head. Just missing my mom. Derek's expression softened immediately. He walked over and wrapped an arm around her shoulders like a loving husband comforting his grieving wife. You shouldn't stay up this late alone. His voice was low and warm enough that if Nyara didn't know the truth, she probably would have cried in his arms the way she used to. But now all she felt was cold. Derek looked at the laptop again. What were you looking at? Nyara knew this was an incredibly dangerous moment. If he saw that email, everything would be over. She lowered her eyes quickly. Old family photos. Derek stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he smiled. Come here, he whispered, before gently guiding her out of the office. You need sleep. As they walked past the staircase, Nyara accidentally noticed Derek's phone lying on the console table near the front door. The screen lit up right as they passed by. A new message appeared. Vanessa, did she sign anything yet? Nyara felt the blood inside her body turn to ice. Derek instantly grabbed the phone and locked the screen too quickly. But it was already too late. He knew she saw it, and Nyara knew he knew. Neither of them said another word while walking back toward the bedroom. The atmosphere between them suddenly changed. For the first time in months, Nyara felt Derek truly watching her. Not with fake tenderness anymore, but with the cold focus of someone trying to determine how much his victim already knew. That night, Derek never slept. Nyara knew because she heard him constantly shifting beside her until nearly 3 a.m. And she didn't sleep either. Because for the first time since her marriage began falling apart, Nyara realized something even more terrifying than betrayal itself. Derek didn't just want money. He was waiting for her to sign something. And he was beginning to lose patience. The next morning, Houston was wrapped in a thin layer of fog after the overnight rain. Nyara stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 7:06 p.m., staring at her reflection beneath the cold white light until even she barely recognized herself. Darker circles under her eyes, sharper cheekbones, and her expression. no longer looked like the woman who once believed her marriage was the safest place in the world. Downstairs, Derek was making coffee. The smell of toast and bacon drifted through the kitchen like any ordinary suburban American morning. If someone had passed by the window at that moment, they would have seen a polite husband preparing breakfast for his wife. No one would have known he was quietly destroying hers by piece. "Morning, baby." Derek placed a cup of coffee in front of Nyara as she walked downstairs. "Did you sleep okay?" Nyara gave a small nod. "A little better than yesterday." Derek watched her a few seconds longer than usual. His eyes still looked gentle. But now Nyara could finally see what was hiding underneath them. "Control, I made a doctor's appointment for you this afternoon," Derek said while she's slicing fruit. "Just a quick checkup." Nyara tightened her hand beneath the table. "I think I'm okay, baby." Derek laughed softly like he was comforting a child. "Last week you forgot your own bank card PIN." Nyara stayed silent because that really had happened. Or at least, Derek had convinced her it did. The scariest thing about gaslighting isn't the lies themselves. It's the moment you begin doubting your own memory. Close to noon, Derek left for his office in downtown Houston. Before leaving, he still placed the small white pill bottle beside the coffee machine, like he always did. "Don't forget to take them on time." The garage door closed. The black Audi rolled out of the driveway, and the second the sound of the car disappeared down the street, every expression vanished from Nyara's face too. She immediately grabbed the keys and headed down to the garage. The smell of engine oil and old wood filled the quiet space. Nyara knelt beside her mother's old tool cabinet, her heart pounding as she remembered the final line from the email the night before. The lockbox beneath the garage. It took her almost 10 minutes to find it. A small metal box hidden behind old paint cans and Christmas blankets. The lock was so worn out, Nyara had to pry it open with a screwdriver. Inside were copies of insurance documents, red USB drivers, stack of photographs, and one small notebook belonging to her mother. Nyara opened the notebook first. The first page was dated March 14th. "Derek asked me about the insurance money again today. He thinks I don't notice. But his eyes change every time money comes up." Nyara's hands turned ice cold. The next page. "He's starting to encourage Nyara to quit her job so she can rest. I don't like this." Another page. "Today I caught Derek standing at Nyara's medication drawer for a very long time." Tears fell onto the notebook. Her mother had seen everything. But back then, nobody trusted the instincts of a sick older woman. Nyara plugged the red USB drive into the old laptop sitting in the garage. Several audio recordings appeared on the screen. The last file was dated only 3 weeks before her mother died. She pressed play. At first there was only soft static. Then Derek's voice filled the speakers. "She's too emotional. If Nyara keeps all the assets, we'll end up with nothing." Nyara froze. Her mother's voice came next, weak but clear. "If you truly loved her, you wouldn't talk about her like she's an investment." The garage suddenly fell into a terrifying silence. Then Derek laughed. A laugh Nyara had never heard in 7 years of marriage. Cold, empty. "You think love pays a mortgage in Houston?" Nyara quickly shut off the recording when she heard her phone vibrating upstairs inside the house. Vanessa calling. Nyara's chest tightened. She stared at the screen for several seconds before finally answering. "Hey girl," Vanessa laughed softly on the other end of the line. "I'm near your neighborhood. Want me to stop by and check on you?" Nyara looked up at the closed garage door in front of her. Something inside her suddenly screamed. Vanessa wasn't calling because she cared. She wanted to find out whether Nyara had already discovered something. Nyara stared at the vibrating phone screen for several more seconds before taking a deep breath and answering the call. She forced her voice to sound normal even though her heart was pounding so hard it hurt in her chest. "Hey, are you okay?" Vanessa asked immediately in that same familiar gentle tone. "I've been calling and you weren't answering." Nyara glanced down at the metal lockbox still sitting open beside her feet in the garage. "Yeah, I accidentally fell asleep." Vanessa went silent for exactly 1 beat, a pause too short for most people to notice, but long enough for Nyara to realize Vanessa was evaluating that answer. "Well," Vanessa laughed softly, "I'm near your neighborhood. Want me to stop by?" Nyara looked at the clock on the laptop screen, 1:12 p.m. Derek normally never came home before 6 p.m., but somehow Nyara suddenly felt like she was running out of time. You don't have to, she said faster than she intended. Another silence followed. Nyara? Vanessa lowered her voice slightly. You know you can trust me, right? There was a time when those words would have comforted Nyara. Now they sent ice down her spine. Yeah, she whispered. I know. The second the call ended, Nyara locked the metal box and carried everything upstairs into the bedroom. She pulled the curtains tighter before plugging headphones into the laptop and continuing through the recordings her mother had left behind. The second recording had been made around 8:43 p.m. About 2 months earlier, the sound of dishes clinking softly echoed through the kitchen. Then Derek's voice. If you truly care about Nyara, you should convince her to sign financial power of attorney. Her mother coughed weakly before replying. She's not as foolish as you think. Derek gave a cold little laugh. No, but she's too emotional. Nyara felt her throat tighten painfully. Some words hurt more than betrayal itself, because they proved the other person never truly loved who you were. They only learned how to exploit the softest parts of you. Just then, the doorbell camera sent a notification. Nyara immediately grabbed her phone and opened the app. Vanessa was standing outside the front door. She wore a beige cardigan, carried a bag of food, and still had the same gentle face Nyara had trusted for 10 years. But now, through the camera lens, Vanessa looked more frightening than any stranger. The doorbell rang again. Nyara? Vanessa called through the door. I know you're home. Nyara's heart slammed violently against her ribs. She looked around the bedroom as if realizing for the first time that this house was no longer safe. Her phone vibrated again. A text from Derek. Baby Vanessa says you sounded strange today. Are you sure you took your medication? Nyara's blood turned ice cold. They were testing her. Vanessa hadn't come here by accident. Derek had sent her. The doorbell rang a third time. Nyara, Vanessa called louder this time. Open the door. Nyara slowly backed away from the bedroom door. Her hand tightened around the phone until her knuckles turned white. In that moment, only one thought remained inside her head. If Derek and Vanessa started suspecting she was no longer taking the pills, everything would become far more dangerous. She quietly walked toward the bedroom window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to look down at the driveway below. Vanessa's car was still parked outside. But what made Nyara freeze completely was the black Audi turning slowly onto the street at the end of the block. Derek had never come home this early before. Nyara could barely breathe as she watched Derek's black Audi slowly pull into the driveway outside the house. The clock on her phone read 1:27 p.m. Derek had never come home this early in years. Never. Vanessa was still standing outside the front door. Derek had just arrived home, and both of them believed she was upstairs alone. Weak, dependent on sleeping pills like every other day. Nyara immediately pulled the curtain shut and turned off the laptop screen. Her hands shook so violently, she almost dropped the USB drive her mother had left behind. Downstairs, the sound of a car door slamming echoed through the house. Then she heard Derek laugh softly. Did she open the door yet? Vanessa answered something too quietly for Nyara to hear. Her heartbeat spiraled out of control. The atmosphere inside the house suddenly changed. It no longer felt like a home. It felt like a trust slowly closing around her. Nyara quickly shoved the USB drive into the hidden lining of her handbag and slid the metal lockbox beneath the bed. Footsteps echoed from downstairs seconds later. Baby? Derek called out in his usual gentle voice. I'm home. Nyara didn't answer immediately. She needed a few seconds to force herself to calm down. When she finally opened the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway, she saw Derek standing at the bottom of the staircase beside Vanessa. Both of them looked up at her almost at the exact same time, and for the first time, Nyara truly saw how similar they were. Not physically, but in their eyes. The same cold watchfulness hidden behind fake concern. Oh, thank God, Vanessa hurried halfway up the stairs. You scared me. Nyara forced a smile. I just fell asleep. Derek stared at her more carefully than usual. You weren't answering your phone. It was on silent. A silence stretched between them for a few seconds, a very small silence. But enough for Nyara to realize Derek was studying every expression on her face. Then suddenly he smiled. Come downstairs, he said gently. Vanessa brought food for you. The kitchen smelled like hot lasagna and garlic bread. Vanessa kept talking as if nothing was wrong. She rambled about co-workers, downtown Houston traffic, and a new salon opening near Katy. But Nyara barely heard any of it because Derek never stopped watching her. He was observing, testing, waiting for her to make a mistake. Then Vanessa slid a glass of water toward her. "Your medication," she said softly, like a caring best friend. "Don't forget." Nyara stared at the white pill resting in her palm. The entire kitchen suddenly fell silent. Derek leaned against the opposite counter with his arms folded across his chest. Vanessa sat beside her, wearing the same familiar gentle smile. But Nyara knew this was a test. If she refused to take it, they would know. She slowly lifted the pill toward her mouth and took a small sip of water. Vanessa watched her carefully. Derek didn't blink. Nyara swallowed. At least, that's what they believed. Because the second she raised the glass to her lips, she had secretly tucked the pill beneath her tongue the same way she had done for the past 3 months. A few minutes later, she excused herself and went upstairs to rest. The second she closed the bedroom door, Nyara spit the pill into a tissue and collapsed onto the floor because her legs no longer had enough strength to hold her up. She felt like she had just survived an interrogation. The sound of Derek and Vanessa laughing softly downstairs made her stomach twist. Then Nyara's phone vibrated. A new email. Sender, Derek Coleman. Subject, appointment confirmation. Nyara opened the email with ice-cold fingers. Appointment tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Westbridge Neurological Center. Below, it was a doctor's note. Patient shows progressive memory instability and dependency symptoms according to spouse observations. Nyara froze. He had prepared everything in advance. This was never about taking her to a checkup. It was about officially turning her into a mentally incompetent woman inside a medical file. And the most terrifying part was the signature section beneath the email didn't only include Derek's name. Vanessa Reed was listed there too, under emergency contact. Nyara read the email 3 times and still felt like something was crushing her chest. Tomorrow, 9:30 a.m., Westbridge Neurological Center, less than 20 minutes from the house. A place she had never even heard of before. Yet somehow Derek had already prepared a file for her there. Patient shows progressive memory instability. Nyara stared at the sentence as her hands turned ice cold. He was officially turning her into a patient on paper. This was no longer gaslighting inside the house. This was a carefully constructed legal trap. Footsteps echoed in the hallway just then. Nyara immediately locked her phone and climbed back into bed right as Derek opened the bedroom door. "You okay?" he asked softly. Nyara gave a small nod and pulled the blanket up to her chest like a woman genuinely exhausted. Derek sat down at the edge of the bed, the warm yellow glow of the bedside lamp casting soft light across his face, making his smile look terrifyingly gentle. "I know doctors make you anxious lately," he said quietly, "but I just want you to get better." Nyara looked at the man sitting in front of her and felt like she was speaking to a complete stranger. Some people lie for so long, they eventually convince themselves they're good people. "Vanessa's coming with us tomorrow," Derek continued. "Is that okay with you?" Nyara's chest tightened painfully. He wasn't even hiding it anymore, not even pretending things were normal anymore. Now Derek was slowly inserting Vanessa into their lives as if she belonged there. Nyara nodded faintly like a machine. "Good." Derek smiled before brushing his fingers gently through her hair. "Get some sleep, baby. You need rest." After he left the room, Nyara lay motionless in the darkness for a very long time. Around midnight, she could hear Derek and Vanessa laughing softly downstairs again. Not loud, not clear, but enough for her to know they were still together. Inside this house, right beneath her bedroom. Slowly, Nyara sat up and picked up her phone again. Her hands trembled while searching for the number of the old lawyer who had worked with her mother for years. Harold Whitman. He was in his 60s now and had almost retired after her mother passed away. Nyara hesitated for several seconds before finally typing into one sentence, "I think my husband is trying to declare me mentally incompetent." The message was sent at 12:42 a.m. She didn't expect an immediate response, but less than 2 minutes later, her phone vibrated, Harold calling. Nyara answered immediately and pulled the blanket over the phone like Derek might somehow hear her from downstairs. "Nyara, Harold's voice turned serious instantly. Where are you right now? P. At home. Are you alone? Nyara stayed silent. Harold went silent too for a few seconds. Then he exhaled very slowly. Listen to me carefully, he whispered. P. Your mother called me 3 months ago. The blood inside Nyara's body seemed to freeze. She told me if anything ever happened to her, or if you started showing unusual memory problems. P. You were never to sign any medical or financial paperwork Derek gave you. Nyara felt the entire room tilt around her. My mom, she knew. She didn't have proof, Harold answered quietly. P. But she said Derek started asking far too many questions about the trust fund and assets after her illness returned. Tears rolled down Nyaра's face before she even realized she was crying. P. Don't go to that appointment tomorrow, Harold continued, his voice now dangerously serious. And listen to me. If Derek already prepared psychiatric documentation for you, then he's gone much further than you realize. P. Right then. Creak. The hardwood floor outside the bedroom groaned. Nyara stopped breathing. A shadow paused outside the bedroom door. Harold was still talking through the phone. P. But Nyara could no longer hear him clearly because the bedroom doorknob had just moved, very slowly, like someone was trying to open the door without making a sound. P. Nyara stared at the slowly turning doorknob in the darkness, her entire body frozen so completely she almost forgot to breathe. P. Harold was still speaking through the phone, but his voice now sounded distant, like it was echoing from underwater. Nyara, are you still there? She didn't answer. P. Because the bedroom door had just opened slightly. A figure stood in the dark hallway. Derek. The yellow light from the staircase down the hall illuminated half his face, enough for Nyara to see the way his eyes were watching her carefully. P. The usual gentleness was gone. Only a cold silence remained, one that sent chills crawling down her spine. Who are you talking to? He asked quietly. P. Nyara immediately turned off speakerphone and pressed the phone tightly against her chest. No one. Derek stared at her for several seconds, a long time. Then he stepped into the room. P. Nyara felt her heart slam painfully against her chest as Derek walked toward the bed. He leaned slightly closer and glanced at the phone screen she hadn't fully locked yet. Harold Whitman. P. The name was still visible on the call screen. The atmosphere inside the room suddenly froze. You called Harold at midnight? Derek asked softly in a way that felt terrifying. P. Nyara knew one wrong reaction right now, and everything would collapse. She forced herself to let out a weak laugh like someone genuinely overwhelmed and unstable. I just P. couldn't remember a few things about my mom's estate and wanted to ask him. Derek kept staring at her without blinking. Then very slowly, P. he reached over and took the phone from her hand. Hello, Harold, Derek said with perfect politeness as he pressed the phone to his ear. P. Sorry, Nyara's been a little anxious lately, so sometimes she calls people late at night. Nyara felt cold all over listening to the way he spoke. Calm, controlled. P. Like everything was completely under his control. Harold stayed silent for a few seconds before answering carefully. I just wanted to make sure Nyara was okay. Of course, Derek laughed softly. P. I always take care of her. He ended the call, then placed the phone on the nightstand. The silence inside the bedroom became suffocating. P. Derek sat down on the edge of the bed facing her. Baby, he said gently, do you think you might be getting paranoid lately? Nyara's throat went dry. P. This was exactly how he did it. No yelling, no threats, just making his victim question herself. No, she whispered. Derek sighed like a helpless husband trying his best. Harold called me last week. P. He looked directly into her eyes. He said you started becoming suspicious of everyone around you. Nyara froze. He was lying. But the way Derek said it sounded terrifyingly believable. P. I know you miss your mom, he continued softly, but you can't keep living like this forever. Nyara felt her thoughts spinning. That was why gaslighting was so terrifying. P. Because sometimes you know someone is manipulating you, but they sound so calm, so reasonable, so gentle. That part of you starts wondering, what if something really is wrong with me? P. Derek reached out and brushed his fingers through her hair. Tomorrow is just an evaluation, he whispered. After that, everything will get better. Then he stood up and walked toward the door. P. Right before leaving the room, Derek stopped, without turning around. Oh, he said quietly, I don't think you should drive yourself for a while. The bedroom door closed. P. Nyara sat frozen on the bed for nearly 10 more minutes before realizing her hands were shaking violently. Not from fear anymore, but because she had just understood something truly horrifying. Derek no longer only wanted control over her money. Step by step, he was isolating her from everyone. Her finances doxes Dr. Friend's lawyer's ability to drive even her own thoughts, and if she walked into that clinic tomorrow morning, there might be no way back. Right then, Nyara's phone vibrated again. A text message from an unknown number. No name, no profile picture. Just one line, "Don't go to Westbridge." Vanessa used to work there. 3 weeks after the incident at Westbridge, Nyara Bennett moved out of the house in Cyprus on a cloudy Houston morning. There were no screaming matches. No dramatic cinematic music, just the sound of suitcase wheels rolling across the rain-dammed driveway and the moving truck engine rumbling outside the house at exactly 7:18 a.m. She wore a simple cream-colored sweater, her hair tied low, holding a cardboard box filled with old photos of her mother and a chipped porcelain teacup that had been cracked years ago. That house used to be her dream. Now it was only the place where she had almost lost her mind. Derek was placed under investigation for financial fraud, falsified medical documentation, and conspiracy to manipulate assets through psychiatric incompetency evaluations. Westbridge Neurological Center was also placed under formal review after 2 former patients contacted the police later that same week. Vanessa left Houston almost immediately. People said she moved to Arizona to stay with her sister. Nyara never checked. She no longer wanted to waste another piece of her life on people who had tried to turn her into a shadow of herself. The strangest thing about betrayal is that after everything ends, the world keeps moving as if nothing ever happened. Coffee shops still open in the mornings, people still go to work. Traffic still fills the highways every day, while somewhere, someone is trying to relearn how to trust their own memory again. Nyara rented a small apartment near Barker Reservoir, with a balcony overlooking the water and old oak trees that rustled softly every evening. It wasn't large, it wasn't luxurious, but it was quiet. On her first night there, she barely slept, not because she feared Derek would come back, but because her body had become so used to waiting for someone to walk into the room after midnight. Some wounds don't leave bruises, they stay inside the nervous system, in the way you flinch when your phone vibrates. In the way you reread a text message 3 times just to make sure you didn't misunderstand it. One morning in early November, Nyara made herself tea for the first time in nearly a year. She stood in her small sunlit kitchen, watching the thin steam rise from the white mug before suddenly letting out a quiet little laugh. No sleeping pills, no control. No one standing behind her, making sure she finished drinking it, just tease. Something so simple she had almost forgotten how normal it once felt. Her phone vibrated softly on the table. At 8:42 a.m., a text from Harold. "How are you feeling today?" Nyara looked at the screen for several seconds before replying, "Like myself again." She placed the phone down, opened the balcony door, and let the cold, early winter air drift into the apartment. In the distance, the lake reflected pale silver sunlight. A woman walked her dog along the sidewalk below. A bicycle passed by. The city was still alive, and for the first time in a very long time, Nyara was too. The scariest thing in the world is not when someone betrays you. It's when they make you start betraying yourself. When you look in the mirror and no longer trust your own thoughts. When you apologize, even though you did nothing wrong. When you begin believing you are too sensitive, too emotional, too weak. Gaslighting doesn't destroy you in one day. It does it little by little. Very gently, very slowly, until you forget who you were before you met them. But there is one thing manipulators always underestimate. The ability of a woman to stand back up once she finally sees the truth. Because the moment you stop doubting yourself is the moment they begin losing control. And sometimes the greatest victory is not revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply a peaceful morning when you can finally drink a cup of tea without being afraid anymore. This story was inspired by real-life forms of psychological manipulation that many people experience but do not recognize at first. Sometimes control does not come through shouting or physical violence, but through excessives happen, repeat small doubts, and subtle behaviors that slowly make someone lose trust in themselves. I wrote this story not to promote fear in marriage, but to remind people that mental health, intuition, and the inner voice of every woman matter deeply. If a relationship constantly makes you feel like you are going crazy, too sensitive, or no longer yourself, sometimes the most important voice to listen to is your own. This is a fictional, cinematic, and emotionally healing story created for storytelling, awareness, and inspiration for those who have experienced manipulation, emotional control, or the feeling of losing themselves inside a relationship. Thank you for watching, supporting, and spending your time with this story. If this message touched your heart in any way, I hope it reminds you that your voice, your instincts, and your peace of mind matter more than you realize.